Step two, you'll recall, is about opening our mind. So we're starting that inner journey, and this is about the power of thought. And to start with, I'd like you to go back to your example of a trigger. And if you remember that exercise where we broke down the reactions to the trigger, and there was the behavioral, there was the physical, there was the emotional, and there was the thought. So if you'd just like to have a little look at that example which you gave, and there's a good case to be made for all those different reactions as being the most important one. Because obviously if you attack somebody, you could end up in prison. So that, you could justify things to say the behavior is most important. You could look at the physical effects and say, well, actually, if I keep on getting angry, I'm going to end up either with cancer or a heart attack if I'm not careful. So you could tick that. You could tick emotions as being the most important reaction because, if you get carried away and lose your head and see red, then, all sorts of awful things could happen. Alternatively, you could tick that last box, the thoughts. So without me saying anything more about it, just look at those four reactions and tick which one you think is the most important of the four. Okay. So, you've probably ticked thoughts because this is what this particular section is all about, but you may not have. And if you have ticked thoughts, that is correct because it's the thoughts that we have about the trigger that leads to everything else. So I can guarantee when it came to your trigger, you wrote down a negative thought. The negative thought leads to a negative emotion. And that combination of thoughts and feelings then has an impact on the body. If you remember, that's a fight and flight reaction. And then the behavior is the outcome of all the things which have gone on inside. So, it's a bit like the volcano, isn't it? We see a volcano exploding and there's lava flowing all over the place. There's clouds of black dust everywhere and it's a real mess. But actually, if you stop and think about it, that eruption is the product of all sorts of internal processes which have gone on beneath the surface. And likewise with our anger, if you just focus on the behavior, you're ignoring all the things beneath the surface which have had a big impact. So our thinking plays a crucial role. So what we're going to do now, I did touch on it a little bit before about the difference between negative thinking and positive thinking. So now we're going to explore that a bit more. Okay. So we're just going to move on now then and look at thoughts in general. So thoughts really they are the power of the mind, an energy in the mind, and that energy can be used in a positive way or a negative way. We can use, for example, we can create nuclear energy. Now that energy can be used to generate electricity, but it can also be used to create bombs, nuclear weapons, which could destroy us all. So in a way, our thoughts are like that. They can either bring benefit to everybody or they can do the opposite. And those thoughts will then be influenced by our beliefs. So if we believe in a certain course of action, if we believe certain things, then that belief will colour everything that we see. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Perception is another thing. Attitude is another thing. These are all aspects of thought. So, there are basically 5 types of thought. Elevated thoughts. So elevated thoughts are uplifting thoughts. thoughts which make us feel good, which take us beyond ourselves. So a famous example would be Barack Obama, with that thought, we can do it, which motivated a lot of people to vote in the first, black president that America has ever had. Then there are the positive thoughts, which bring benefit to myself and others. Negative thoughts, which damage the self and others. We've explored that a little bit. Necessary thoughts, so thoughts which are necessary to daily life, like I must remember to get the kids from school, or I must remember to go to the shops and get some food. If I didn't have thoughts like that, then the kids could end up in care and I could die from starvation. So necessary thoughts are important, obviously. Wasteful thoughts are repetitive and energy draining. So, for example, if I keep thinking I'm going to win the lottery, on Saturday night, and I spend all day just dreaming about it and imagining how I'm going to spend all the money, that could be seen as a wasteful thought because it's stopping you from doing other things which may be more productive. Okay to think about it for a minute or two, but all day is maybe a bit extreme. So basically it's useful if we can take a step back and look at what's going on in our mind. What sort of thoughts are we creating? And there's a little process called, check and change, where you can look at your thoughts and think, do I really want to have a thought like this? And then if you decide that you don't, if you realize it's negative, it's going to have a negative impact, then change it to something more positive. So more about positive thoughts then. So positive thoughts are focused on the here and now. So for example, I am peaceful. Not saying I was peaceful yesterday or I will be peaceful tomorrow. I am peaceful. Unqualified. So in other words, we don't put any words in like sometimes or on occasions. So I am peaceful, full stop. Not I am sometimes peaceful. And of course the word needs to bring benefit to other people. So if I am peaceful, then obviously it's going to have a good impact on others. And then without any negatives. So we could say I am not angry, rather than saying I am peaceful. Now, it's quite interesting that the subconscious does not recognize the word not. So if you use not in anything, it's almost as if the subconscious mind deletes it. So if I say I am not angry, it gets translated in the mind as I am angry. So very important really to remember that, and then we can use those guidelines then to help us, in different ways. So positive thinking is about changing individual thoughts, including my attitude, beliefs, and language. So I'm going to talk a little bit more now about attitude because there's a famous example of the glass of water. There's water up to the middle of the glass. Is it half full or is it half empty? So what do you think? Some of you may say it's half full. Some may say it's half empty. Who is right? The answer is both of you. But the consequences of seeing it one way rather than the other are very different. So if I see it as half full, I won't mind sharing it with you because there's lots left. If I think it's half empty, I'm going to keep it to myself because there's not much left. So very important to check your attitude. Because your attitude is a framework or an approach which you apply to everything in your life. It's like a automatic default position. It could be raining and you'll be complaining if you have a negative attitude. Even if there's been a drought for a month, you will still say, oh no, look at the rain, because of that negative attitude. Positive attitude, you'll always see the best in everything. Never mind, it's okay, we'll manage. It's a very different energy. It makes you feel much better. You're much less likely to get frustrated and irritated if you have a positive attitude. Likewise with your beliefs. If your beliefs are negative beliefs, then you're going to end up always feeling sad, stressed, angry, or depressed. Now, our beliefs are something which we absorb at a very young age from our parents and other significant people in our life. We almost breathe them in. They become part of us without us realizing it. And if those beliefs are negative beliefs, then they're going to have a profoundly negative impact on us. So a good example would be if you believe that life is full of conflict and suffering, and you were to live on a street of 100 houses, and in 99 of them, those houses, everyone was living a perfectly normal, happy life. But in one house, the children were in care and the parents were going through a terrible divorce. Because of your belief, you would only focus on that one household, because that one household would be reaffirming and reinforcing your belief. Does that make sense? So beliefs really play a big part in how we think and how we see things and how we interpret the world. And they say, where the attention goes, the energy flows. So you'll only see what you want to see, things which will reinforce your preconceived beliefs, preconceived ideas and perceptions. Which is why at the moment, there's all this false news around and that people, they will believe the false to be true, even though it's not officially true, because they want it to be true. So we have to be very careful about what sort of thoughts we're generating in our mind, and we need to use our power of discrimination to judge them, and then if they're not helpful, delete them. Because otherwise it's going to lead to a lot of negative thoughts and actions and feelings, and the frustration and everything else is going to come in, and that's really going to have a big impact on us. So that's quite a lot about positive thinking in that respect. So again, if we want to get rid of some of those old beliefs, if we want to feel better in ourselves, then we can replace those negative beliefs with positive ones, which we can use in the form of an affirmation. So an affirmation is repeating something positive many times a day in order for it to become a reality. So there's someone called Louise L. Hay, who really is the queen of affirmations. And she has one which can be used a lot to help ourselves. And that is, I completely love and accept myself as I am. I completely love and accept myself as I am. So just notice how you feel when you repeat that to yourself a few times. Notice how lots of conflict goes, lots of tension goes in the mind, and you start to feel peaceful. And an affirmation can make a really big difference to how you feel about yourself. It can lift your spirits. And as we've seen, when you feel good, you do good. Because actually, anger is really a sign of unhappiness. It's a sign of being in pain. And really, we don't want to be in that state. So affirmations can definitely help. Another thing that can help is visualization or imagination. And a lot of us actually spend a lot of time imagining. Well, we're always using the power of imagination without necessarily realizing it, but we use it in a negative way a lot of the time. So we imagine the worst is going to happen. In other words, catastrophize things. You imagine the bus is going to be half an hour late when actually it's only 2 or 3 minutes late. But it'll stress you out. It'll make you all anxious. It'll make you irritated and frustrated. If you go into a meeting dreading going into the meeting because you think it's going to be really long and boring, and so is going to be attacking you, the outcome is those sorts of things will actually happen because your mind is very powerful. And you're creating a set of circumstances which could actually happen. So rather than go down that route, imagine the meeting going very well. Imagine everybody being relaxed. Imagine you have a positive outcome, that people listen to each other. Imagine being assertive and putting across your point of view in a nice way rather than an aggressive way. So visualization or power of your imagination can help a lot. And then, of course, there's meditation, and that's really is about focusing on something positive, something spiritual, which we can go on to later on. Okay, so that's something about the positive thinking. There are other things here which we'll just mention, which are connected with it, which can help us to deal with things in a much more effective way. So one is putting a full stop. So that means just refusing to think about the trigger anymore. Something's happened, somebody said something. You could spend all day talking about it, telling other people about it, getting upset about it, ruining your night, because instead of watching the telly or having a nice game with the kids, you're just sitting there all tense and anxious and furious. So, if you need to ventilate about these things, then put a limit to it, say 5 minutes. And then after that, you just put a full stop. I'm not talking about this anymore. It's just ruining my life, draining my energy. So that can help a lot. Getting rid of expectations. A lot of frustration and irritation comes about because people don't live up to our expectations. And expectations are actually a way of trying to control other people. And we can't control anybody except who? Ourselves. So as we've seen, we can control our own thoughts and words and actions, but we can't control anyone else's, even though we would like to. So if you have any expectations about anything or anyone, that's going to cause you lots of frustration and irritation and anger. If you expect somebody to say thank you when you give them a present, and they don't say thank you, you're going to get upset. If you arrange to meet somebody for a coffee and they phone you up half an hour beforehand and cancel on you because they've got, a toothache or whatever, you could get upset. Your day has been ruined. Well, has it? Not necessarily. If you were to change expectations into hope, hope is more fluid, more flexible. And that makes life more manageable. So you hope people will say thank you when you give them a present, but if they don't, it's okay. There's nothing to get upset about. What's the point? Likewise, if somebody, can't turn up for the coffee, not to worry, it's okay. I'll either go by myself or I'll phone up another friend, or I'll use the time to get some housework done or finish off an email, whatever it may be. There's always ways and means of managing things when we're not rigid, when we're not trying to force things and control things. Another important thing is to develop an attitude of gratitude. If you focus on the things you haven't got, what's going to happen? You're really going to get frustrated. Oh, if only I had a bigger house, a nicer car. If only the kids would, work hard, at their studies, etc., etc. Rather than going down that route, be grateful for the fact that you have a roof over your head. Be grateful that you have a car that works. Be grateful that you've got 2 healthy children, who bring you a lot of love and joy into your life. And that shift in attitude really makes a big difference. And we've got so much to be grateful for. So if you really want to feel great, then I recommend you write a list of 50 things you're grateful for. And that will shift your whole attitude and make you feel good, not just for today, but for always. And then, yes, using positive, proactive language. But we've already talked a bit about this, but it's worth reinforcing. So these are all sorts of things that you can do to generate positive thoughts rather than negative thoughts. And, when you're looking for solutions, when you're trying to understand what's going on, when you're wanting to make the best of things, it's a whole different mindset. You're not there waiting to judge, to condemn, to attack. You're there in an open, friendly, peaceful state. And in that state, you'll attract peace into your life. People will come to you with an open mind. People will be happy to be in your company. They won't be defensive. They won't be waiting for you to get out your knife to stab them in the back. So lots of good things there to consider. Okay, so moving on, these are other things which really probably fit in better under this step 2 rather than the other steps. And one of those is the importance of asserting yourself. As I said before, being peaceful doesn't mean being a doormat. And one way in which we can stop ourselves from being a doormat is to be assertive. And there's one word in particular which can be very useful when it comes to being more peaceful, and that is using the word no. Putting down boundaries and saying, no, I can't do this. Or if you want me to do this, I can either do this or that. I can't do both. In other words, being assertive. So assertive behaviour is behaviour which helps us to communicate clearly and confidently our needs, wants and feelings to other people without abusing in any way their human rights. It's an alternative to aggressive, passive and manipulative behaviour. Now, the key thing about assertiveness behaviour is we're wanting to create win-win situations. We're wanting to negotiate from a position of self-respect. We're not wanting to prove ourselves and make the other person feel inferior. So we need to be honest, we need to be open, we need to have good intentions. We need to keep calm and relaxed. We need to, in particular, know what we want and ask for it clearly. This is very important. So if somebody is shouting at you, rather than say, don't shout back at me, we need to put it in another way. Please speak to me without shouting. Please, whatever it is you feel you want to say, to stop that. And then use I statements. So I feel unhappy when you shout at me. You're not blaming them. You're letting them know how you feel. So you're giving them feedback. You're giving them, and then you are able to negotiate because you're saying what you want. So again, we need to listen with an open heart to the other person and to ourselves. What's going on in here? We need to be firm but fair. Aim for a win-win situation. Be prepared to compromise. And avoid criticizing and blaming the other person. So we're not saying it's all your fault. We just say, I feel this when you say or do that. And then we negotiate, a win-win outcome. And of course there will be sanctions there as well. The boundaries means if you carry on shouting at me, I will walk out the room. If you threaten me, I will call the police. So you need to have boundaries and you need to stick to them and you need to implement them. Not just say them, but do it. So the person gets the message that you mean business. Okay, so there's lots of food for thought there. Now, one final thing which underlies really a lot of issues to do with anger is satisfying our primary needs. Now, this bit here is taken from a book called Beating Anger, and I've seen it elsewhere in other documents, but it's particularly good the way it's expressed here. So really, as human beings, we're emotionally, we have lots of needs, and these needs include feeling valued, safe, significant, cared for, feeling seen and heard and accepted, appreciated, acknowledged, respected, encouraged. We want to feel useful, we want to feel we belong, we want to feel we've been treated honestly and fairly. We want to feel trusted and loved and held. And these are very powerful needs, if you like. That's why they're called primary needs. They're basic needs. And if those aren't fulfilled, then we're going to get angry. So Mike Fisher in the Beating Anger book says, whenever we feel angry or hurt or afraid, we can be sure that a primary need is not being met, either by ourselves or others. And I think that last bit there, either by ourselves or others, is very important because we can now, as adults, we can satisfy a lot of our own primary needs by valuing ourselves and loving ourselves and caring for ourselves and being compassionate with ourselves. And actually quite a lot of our frustration and anger and that comes from that negative voice inside that's constantly criticizing us and beating us up and telling us we're no good. So very important really to listen to what's going on in the head in terms of thoughts, in terms of voices. Change them. Turn off that critical radio that's blasting away inside. Replace it with some nice, kind, loving thoughts, some encouraging thoughts, some empowering thoughts, some affirming thoughts, so that we feel good inside, we feel peaceful, we feel calm, and then we're in a much better position to help others and help ourselves. So we'll finish with the affirmation we used at the end of the first step. So sit back, sit upright, legs uncrossed. Do the slow, deep, gentle diaphragm breathing. Turn your attention inwards. And just say to yourself quietly in your mind, peaceful being. I am peace. I am. And now, in this quiet and peaceful space, just ask yourself, what is the main thing I've learned from step 2? What change am I going to make in my thinking patterns? How will this help me in my life? So we've done quite a lot of exploring of the mind, haven't we? We've looked at thoughts, what they are, the different types of thoughts. We've looked at beliefs and attitude and affirmations and visualization, meditation a little bit. And we've also looked at the importance of asserting ourselves and paying attention to our inner primary needs. So lots of food for thought there. Hopefully it's going to help you a lot to change your mind. And then in changing your mind, you're going to change your life.